am Nathalia Jackson, reporting from Kids First. Today, I have the pleasure to catch up with John Simmons, who has had a prolific career as both a photographer and cinematographer. He is vice president of the American Society of Cinematographers and known for his work on more than 25 television series. And today, we are discussing his career as an Emmy-winning award cinematographer and photographer whose work is currently on display at 3 art galleries, including the Getty Museum in LA. Wow, congratulations and welcome to the show. How are you, John?
I'm doing well, and thank you for having me. I'm pretty excited about talking to you.
Oh, it's such an honor. I'm excited to talk to you too. So why don't we just jump into it?
Let's go.
All right, well, Mr. Simmons, or just call you John, how about that?
You can call me
You
John.
have captured major historical events such as the Civil Rights Movement to capturing daily life to the protests in Georgia for the Voting Rights Act. What initially drew you to photography?
You know, I've always been involved in creative pursuits. Even as a little kid, I was in love with drawing and painting. And, you know, the other thing too was it was during the 1960s that I became interested in photography. And that was a very passionate period culturally. I mean, there was the war demonstrations, the Vietnam War, there was the whole hippie movement. There was all kinds of wonderful creative things coming out of the whole civil rights struggle was there. And, you know, the protests and the music and the poetry. I felt like I wanted to do something really creative. I even took dance lessons before that. I did. And I took music lessons. Maybe I wanted to be a saxophone player. And I would always paint. Well, my friend's older brother was a photographer. His family owned a newspaper called the Chicago Daily Defender newspaper, which is the oldest Black publication in the country. It started in 1906. And his older brother, what? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, continue.
Oh, I was going to say, so I admired his older brother. I thought he was like the coolest cat I knew. And when I would spend time in the darkroom with him, watching his print, it was just magic. So one day at a convention, he let me borrow a camera. And when he looked at the photographs, he said, whoa, you've got an eye. But as soon as I put my eye to that camera, I knew it was something that I could do and that I could look through for a long time. And at that point, he began to expose me to different kinds of photographers, very important photographers. Roy DeCarava had done a book with Langston Hughes called The Sweet Flypaper of Life that just really made me fall in love with it. It was a story of the life of a Black family in Harlem, day in the life. And the photographs were just candid street photographs. And Bobby also took those. And then he introduced me to Gordon Parks' work and Henry Cartier-Bresson. And I just knew that I was built to take a picture. So that's how it started.
Wow, just like you said, you were built to take a picture. And I think just you explaining it, photography, it's such a simple thing, the vision of it, but it's really complex. Like you said, there's so many forms of photography and there's so much that you can capture, and it gives us the opportunity and look back on the most important moments in history. And just like you shared, there was a lot going on in the 1960s, a lot of protests, a lot of people who were being creative and wanting to use their voice for good. And I think you can relate that a lot to today, especially within the past year of 2020. There was a lot going on and a lot of protests, just like the 60s. And a lot of people use their creative minds to kind of share with their ideas and their opinions. So it's pretty awesome how it relates so much to now. And following that, growing up in Chicago, like you said, at the peak of civil rights movement, and it molded you as an artist. What first inspired you to transform your vision into authenticity?
Well, it was pretty easy because, like I said, the camera worked for me. We were kind of made for each other. So shortly after I started taking pictures, Bobby got me a job working at the Chicago Daily Defender newspaper. I worked in the darkroom first, and then I began to cover stories. So just through covering stories, it gave authenticity to my work. And that in itself continues. You know, I, as a person, all of us have a point of view, you know? And my point of view was shaped by my childhood, the politics and the environments of my childhood. I mean, I picked up a camera in 1965. That was the first year that Black people were allowed to vote in this country. So I grew up with a certain kind of consciousness of who I was, who my community was. And I had a real affinity for my community. So if you look at my photographs, my candid street photographs tell the story of who I am and where I was. And you can feel the relationship I have to the subjects because they're important to me. There's a warmth there that is evident. And I continue to see humanity in that same light. You know, I still take street photographs. I still carry a camera, and I still try and tell the truth about the things I see.
Well, I think all of that hard work has paid off, and you have photographed such amazing things. And not even that, you have directed some of the greatest music artists, such as Stevie Wonder, Britney Spears, Snoop Dogg, and others. I mean, what did you take away from that experience?
Well, I wasn't directing those things. I directed a lot of music videos, but for the most part, I was shooting those things as a cinematographer. And the wonderful thing about making music videos, at that time, the entertainment end of the video, the people, didn't know a lot about making movies. Now they do, right? But before, so there was this marriage, this brand new marriage, and people trusted the cinematographer. And you didn't have videos. It wasn't like, hey, look at what I shot, right? They had to trust you. So making music videos became an experimental playground for me. I was able to use lights and colored gels and different kinds of equipment to just do all kinds of crazy things because I only really needed to get 6 seconds worth of usable stuff. That's all you need. Nothing is on MTV or anything for longer than 4 seconds and you're on to the next shot, right? So I got to learn a lot of do's and don'ts about cinematography through making music videos, which helps me even today. It translates even to the TV shows that I shoot now. I learned my lenses, I learned velocity of a camera movement. I just was able to experiment with so much in music videos that it translates into the work that I still do or into the movies that I've shot. You know, so yeah, it was a good playground.
Well, like you just said, it was a great playground, and not like you directed it, but as a cinematographer, you got to get that experience working with all sorts of different genres of people, all sorts of different backgrounds, and good cinematography is more than just pretty images. It means telling an actual story through moving images. How do you, as a cinematographer, affect a film?
Well, I create the look of a film. I create, like right now, we have light coming through the windows, and that's what you see. Now, as a cinematographer, I could shoot this shot of myself exactly like this, or I could put something over the window behind me and make that wall in the back go darker. And then all of a sudden I stand out more. So as a cinematographer, I've studied a lot of paintings. And as a professor, I was a professor at UCLA for 26 years, teaching cinematography at the school there. And we would start our class off in the art museum. And we look at the different styles of paintings and how those paintings, how those styles fit into modern environments. So as a cinematographer, I create the look of morning. I create the look of night. I create the look of afternoon. I create the look of it being cold, right? And for that, I have lots of references. And as a cinematographer, so many other things are important, like Aristotle's Poetics, which is the structure of drama, is something very important for a cinematographer to know because you know how stories are made and you know what lenses are best to tell that part of the story or what light tells the story. My job is to bring life to the narrative.
Well, I think many people underestimate the importance of a cinematographer. I mean, even myself at some point, I wasn't really as informed about what a cinematographer does. And now that I am, it makes me realize every single asset is important. The lighting, the angle, the camera lens, everything that you've just mentioned, it all plays a part in making a wonderful film. You know, you set really the scene. And continuing that, you are a champion for increased diversity on set, which is awesome. How can Hollywood change some of its barriers to entry?
Well, I think that all of us have a very important contribution to society. And my first jobs, I was pretty much the only person of color on the sets. And it wasn't that comfortable in many ways. And what I wanted to do was I said, as soon as I get in charge of this situation and become the head of my department, because I am in charge of the lighting, the grips who do all the rigging, and the camera department. That's a lot of people. On the show that I'm working on right now, that's about 35 people. And I want those 35 people to look like the world we live in. You know, I want you, Nathalia, to peep your head in the door of that stage and see the possibility of any one of those positions fulfilling your dream. And I think that Hollywood is beginning to recognize that more and more. And I think what we have to do is we have to make a conscious effort to reach out to people and bring people up and give them the opportunities to learn. And the studios are also trying to make the efforts to do that. And it is an effort because a lot of people in my position are confronted with a certain amount of expedience to get the job done. And in order to do that, you have to work with the same people all the time so you can have the shortcuts, right? But I'm saying, don't do that. Always invite somebody else in. Invite a woman in, invite a person of color in, invite an older person in, because all those things are useful to us and they're all our treasures to draw upon. And I don't know if I answered your question, but I never stopped doing that.
Well, I mean, just like you shared, you were the only person of color in that setting. I can't imagine how uncomfortable that might have been. Like you said, it wasn't the comfortablest. You know, feeling like you have a standard to set because you are a person of color. I mean, I totally understand that. And, you know, that's awesome to see where you came from and where you are now and your mindset at that time. Just wow, like I really need to include people in this world that can help me, people of color, because I am the only person in the setting and I want to make a difference. So thank you so much for speaking with me. And thank you, John Simmons, for talking to me today. You can find John Simmons' culturally rich, historically relevant work can be found at the J. Paul Getty Museum, Aziz Gallerie, and Jean Deleage Art Gallery at Casa, 0101 Theater, and check local listings for the dates. So thank you once again, John.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And I am Nathalia Jackson, reporting from Kids First. And be sure to look for this and others and subscribe to our channel so you can watch other talent interviews and film reviews. Thanks for watching. Bye.